Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay. I am Austin Victoria Turk, and I currently serve as the Student Government Association President. This evening, I have the distinct honor of introducing our honorable guest, Reverend Jesse L. Jackson, Sr. The conscience of the nation and the great unifier, two of the mockers for which civil rights icon Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. has been known by during his global advocacy for peace, civil rights, empowerment, gender equality, and economic and social justice. The founder and current president of the Rainbow Push Coalition, Reverend Jackson is known all over the world as one of the foremost civil rights, religious, and political figures of our time. Born in Greenville, South Carolina in 1941, Reverend Jackson would later graduate from North Carolina A&T State University and then pursue a graduate degree in theological studies at the University of Chicago's Chicago Theological Seminary. When the opportunity to work full-time for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. arose, he deferred his studies but would later be ordained to the ministry. He later earned a Master's of Divinity degree from the Chicago Theological Seminary in 2000. Reverend Jackson began his activism as a student in the summer of 1960 by seeking to desegregate Greenville's local public library and continued his efforts as a leader in the famous college sit-in movement while a student at North Carolina A&T University. In December 1971, Reverend Jackson founded Operation PUSH, People United to Serve Humanity, in Chicago with the goal of economic empowerment and expanding educational, business, and employment opportunities for the disadvantaged and people of color. In 1984, he founded the National Rainbow Coalition, a social justice organization based in Washington, D.C., and devoted to political empowerment, education, and changing public policy. In September 1996, the Rainbow Coalition and Operation PUSH merged to form the Rainbow Push. In 1991, in Washington, D.C., voters elected Reverend Jackson as a representative to the U.S. Senate. His two presidential campaigns in 1984 and 1988 broke a new ground in the United States. Reverend Jackson has continued to be a leading advocate for a variety of public policy issues that affect minority and domestic communities. He remains committed to promoting voter registration within communities across the United States. Let's give a warm to you welcome to Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Thank you. Let me express my sincere thanks and delight for your kind and generous introduction. It's always a joy to be back at Tuskegee Institute University again. You got that Institute University again. I want to express my thanks to Dr. Morris. I called last week, so we're taking a tour across the South, more specifically this week across Alabama. I wanted to come by Tuskegee and do a measured rally to enlist your leadership in this proposition. And just like her, she made this a formal event and put me in the middle of this very formal auditorium, and I am scared to death. Give your interim president, give her a big hand, please. Give her a big hand. Such an able leader in this season takes on particular dimensions. To one of my freedom classmates who went to jail more time than can be counted, did so many marches, broke so many barriers, led Tuskegee for so many years. He's the kind of train that keeps on going down the tracks. He means so much to me and to our generation. Johnny Ford, please stand. We hear so much about the work of Thurgood Marshall, the 54th Supreme Court decision to end legal apartheid, segregation, as we had known it since 1896. And it is as if that event, that case is frozen in time, and so is the name of Thurgood Marshall. The man who won more civil rights cases than Thurgood Marshall. any man who ever lived is in our audience tonight and lives in Tuskegee. I asked Mrs. Parks once, why didn't you go to the back of the bus? She said, well, for two reasons. One, I thought about Emmett Till and I couldn't go back. Secondly, Fred Gray and I had worked every Wednesday for a year, determined how we were going to test the 54 decision to see if it was valid. That I was not, as they depict me to be, some washerwoman. She taught literacy. She was a civil rights fighter with the right public credentials to be the test case for the 55 decision. Her lawyer was attorney Fred Gray. Dr. King's lawyer was attorney Fred Gray. Most desegregation of higher education in Alabama was attorney Fred Gray. The syphilis case exposed in Tuskegee, Alabama was attorney Fred Gray. When we were turned back from marching from Selma to Montgomery in 1965, the man who got the permit for us to march from Selma to Montgomery was attorney Fred Gray. Please stand. Give him a big hand. Put your hands together. I want to, in this season, talk a bit about our voter registration efforts across the state. We were at the University of Alabama on last night. We're about 4,000 African Americans, members of that student body now. We registered over 200 of them last night. Most of them did not realize you could vote residents. You can vote where you attend school. If you're in Tuskegee or Tuscaloosa, you don't have to vote at home. You can vote where you get your mail. You can vote where you stayed last 2 or 3 nights in a row. So many who are registered should re-register here in Macon County. You register in Tuskegee, that case in Tuscaloosa. And with all of their political science majors, they did not realize that fact. The other fact is that if you're intimidated by the process, you have the right to take someone in the booth with you to assist you in the process of voting. So we did that on last night. And then today George Washington Carver High School, 280 high school seniors, we registered every high school senior today. There are 61,000 high school seniors in this state. And each one should come across the stage with a diploma in one hand, symbolizing knowledge and wisdom, and a voter card in the other, symbolizing power and responsibility. If a principal is going to convene the high school senior class for the senior class march, for the graduation march, they should also convene them. There's no George Wallace to stop us, no Bull Condor to stop us. Just register every high school senior, make it part of applied civics. They come across the stage with a diploma in one hand and a voter card in the other. It's just it's low-hanging grapes these days. Every college student who wants lower tuition and want a decent wage when you get through working on your degree and get out of here has a need to vote bottom up and not top down. I would make a case, since there are more applications for this school than there are slots, those who do get in should have stamped on their application their voter registration card. You should come in, that's a basic requirement. Why is that so critical? Well, at this time, Dr. Morris, there are 4 million African Americans in the South not registered tonight. 2.5 million who are registered who didn't vote in the last election. If we vote our numbers and vote our hopes and not our fears, we have the power to change the South from red to purple to blue. The ex-slave states still have the capacity to change the course of Alabama and the South. And all these big elections are won by very narrow margins or by tricks of the trade. For example, even in the era of Trump, when people vote and fight back and don't surrender, good things come our way. In New Jersey, it was an election. Democratic governor won, and now there's an African-American lieutenant governor in New Jersey for the first time. In Virginia, there was one candidate running to uphold Robert E. Lee's statue in the Confederates, and another progressive chose to go another way and won. The African-American lieutenant governor in Virginia now. Of course, the big showdown in Alabama, December 12th, where you voted more or less your hopes. But I must say that of all those counties that turned out, a representative Macon County voted less than its best. And that's a statement yet to be made. So even during this very dark season, I see evidence of lights here and there sparkling in the dark, because it suggests we will not give up and we will not surrender. There are nearly 4,000 students on this campus, students and faculty and administrators, everybody that should have on their lapel an I voted button indicating your sensitivity. Because if we vote our numbers, we can be out from under this horrendous nightmare that we now face coming out of Washington. It's corrupt, and it is not fair for the American people. And the needs are so great. It's not just, it is our burden. We can be minorities with majority vision. Minorities with majority vision. And that's kind of what made Joseph significant. In the Bible, he was a minority with a majority economic vision. Moses was a minority with a majority economic vision. Dr. King was a minority with a majority vision. So we have more than votes, we have leadership, we have thoughts and ideas, we have minds to think and actions to take. And so when you voted December 12th, you changed the course of all of Alabama. If we didn't have the right to vote, you could have hoped for a victory and prayed for a victory. This time you could vote for it and did. So when we vote in great numbers, good things come our way. We cannot spend more than we have and vote less than we have and expect solid results. I said we cannot spend more than we have and vote less than we have and expect solid results. And so we'll see it going from dormitory to dormitory, frat to frat, sorority to sorority, knocking on doors saying, please vote, all down through the belt. Every high school senior, every city college student, every four-year college student who want a low tuition, who want to change the course. There are more Americans 18 to 21 than 71 to 81. You have the power bottom up in this democracy to make America better. One of my concerns, John, as I look at our landscape this weekend in Selma, Alabama, we come back to commemorate this march one more time. That march was predicated upon a will to fulfill a law and a promise made. It comes right on the heels of the first Sunday in March, just after the celebration of African American History Month. And I'm increasingly concerned. I understand that Carla Woodson's notion was to highlight black achievers because there were so many negative, despicable images of us, so many disparaging images of us. He wanted to show black achievers against the odds. I'm concerned about the journey, not just the achievers who achieved along the journey. So in the days when Jack Johnson beat Tom Jeffers at a time when African Americans had no rights, whites were bound to respect in this land, for Jack Johnson to win that fight was a big deal to us psychologically. Achiever. When Joe Louis beat Max Mellon, it was a kind of world championship fight. And Hitler was purporting Aryan superiority. Joe Louis beat him the second time, minute 37 seconds of the first round. It was a big deal. We named our children Joe Louis. Or when Jesse Owens won the big race in Berlin at the Olympics, and we were the fastest person in the world. That was a big deal to us. I once asked Jesse Owens, were you upset? I said, Brother Jesse, when Hitler did not shake your hand? He said, no, because when I came back home, Roosevelt didn't shake my hand either. Oh yes, we were fighting wars on both sides of the ocean, which is the Tuskegee Statement, fighting wars on both sides of the ocean, ending the same sick racism. When Jack Robinson entered the White Baseball League. That was a big breakthrough for us. And he was playing baseball, but his teammates were pulling for him to strike out. His teammates were pulling for him to fail, which meant they were willing to fail with him rather than watch him succeed. And you can call the roll on black achievement. Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest man ever, and the like. But that is not our story. Those are achievers. The 55 boycott success is an achievement. The 63-month Birmingham movement and the letter from the Birmingham jail was an achievement season. The March on Washington speech, I hear just enough of it to be sickened by not putting it in context. The dream only makes sense, Fred, if it's in context. The day he gave that speech, the government reacted by locking down militarily every airport and every train depot within 300 miles. The day he gave that speech, if you came in from north-south from Virginia or north-south from Maryland, you had to be checked at the border. The day he gave that speech from Texas across to Florida up to Maryland, we couldn't use a single public toilet. The day he gave that speech, we could not eat ice cream in the front door of Howard Johnson. The day he gave that speech, we did not have the right to vote in the South. The day he gave that speech, we could not rent a room in Holiday Inn. Black soldiers stood weeping because black and Latino soldiers had to sit behind knots of POWs on American military bases. I dream of a day when we'll be beyond this predicament. The dream took on earth-shattering proportions because of the context of the time. But again, that was just a season and a moment in time. On December, March in 1965. Next year, Fred, we will have been in this country for 400 years. The same at the time the children of Israel were in Egypt's land, 400 years. And we know much more about their journey in slavery than our own journey in slavery. We know more about the journey of their Moses than our own. We know more about the Red Sea than we do about the Atlantic Ocean. That's what we had to cross. That was our Red Sea. We know about their Jordan River, but not much about our Mississippi River and our Pearl River and our Savannah River. And so it becomes our burden to deal with it. Let me ask you a question. How many of you remember your grandparents? Raise your grandparents, raise your hand. Your grandparents. You remember your grandparents? Raise your hand. Hands down. Your great-grandparents, raise your hand. Great-great. Great. Well, it kind of becomes a laughing matter because it's you go into darkness. David to Jesus was 42 generations, 1,000 years. We get back around 150 years and get tripped up and start laughing because we share the darkness. And because the impact of slavery was to erase our memory, take away our consciousness, our sense of somebodyness. It erased the memory of the enslaved and the enslavers. Point one, which referred to those who were our parents, not as slaves, but as ancestors. There was somebody else a slave, they were our ancestors. They were David was his great-grandparent for the second degree. Those who were enslaved were not slaves, they were our ancestors. They were enslaved by the conquerors of that time. 1619. Constitution, Declaration of Independence, 1776. We'd been in slavery 157 years when the Constitution, Declaration of Independence was written, without an identity. We've been enslaved 169 years when the Declaration of Independence was written. The biggest debate at the convention was what shall we do with our chief generators, Africa and Africans. After all, the base of the wealth was the labor from Africa, the resources from Africa, and the shipping magnates who shipped African people from Africa to the east coast of our country. What should we do with them? Well, let's declare them to be 3/5 of a human. That was the conclusion after a big radical debate about what should we do with them. That's part of our darkness. And someone said that around 1752 to Frederick Douglass, says, since you're such an eloquent speaker, why don't you have something to say and speak to us? He says, I can't speak because I'm a fugitive from the law. They might capture me and take me back into slavery again. And if you thought he was just talk, when Dred Scott did dash away in 1857, they did take him back and declared that a black had no right or white was bound to respect. That was the Supreme Court. The fact is, the United States government, repeat, the United States government, and all of its power, military and courts, enslaved us, as in we were slaves to the American government. And that's the only thing that can set us free. And so when that decision was written in 1857, around this fall of 1862, after the Battle of Antietam, they thought that Robert E. Lee would win because he had gotten as far north as Maryland. And then Lincoln did a magnificent thing. Always the only way I can win if I will free those that I can free and empower them to be citizens and join the Union Army. I can win the war, but I have to end slavery as a trade-off. And he did just that. And we got into the war as we ceased to be the back line for the Confederates, because we were their cooks while they fought. We were their farmers while they fought. We were their supply line while they fought. We were free from that duty. Then the Confederates had to do that themselves. That weakened them tremendously. And then when they joined the Union Army, by law, they had the right to even shoot their slave masters. That was the most radical change in American history. And so we knew kind of the ramifications of that. And Fred, when Lincoln said 100 days from January the 1st, I will free you, we couldn't believe it. We could hope for it. The slave master said it will not happen. If it does happen, we will kill him, which they eventually did, hoping he would not change his mind. We could not picket, we could not protest. We had no power except to hope and pray. It couldn't have been about Christmas because we couldn't earn wages and we couldn't shop and we couldn't go downtown, so we had to wait. The big deal for us was December 31st, which was the first watch night. The first watch. Now we watch night as holy people go to church and social people have parties, and they get ready to cook greens and ham hocks on January 1st and watch the ball game. For us, this was a prayer. They prayed, they watched all night and prayed all night, hoping Lincoln would sign that document and for the first time enable African American people to be free. If you have not read the Emancipation Proclamation, we'll just have to read it and study it, particularly the second verse where he comes into the full weight of the U.S. government's military. No one else has any right to, and biblically it's the 13th chapter and the third verse of Exodus. Commemorate this day. Commemorate this day when the Lord put his long hand and took people out of bondage, out of slavery, and tell this to your children that they might know. The first free day we ever knew with the full weight of the government was January 1st, 1863. For our people, it was Jubilee Day. It was the day to be sanctified, the day to be set aside. We must never forget that the immigrants came looking for a better land, and they found it. But they were subsidized. They got free land. They got homestead land. They got tax breaks. They got slaves to work for them. And so they came. And there were advertisements all over Europe. You can go to America, get 500 acres of land, X number of Negroes to work that land. And refugees came out of desperation, and they came to make their case, and we received them. But there's another, we say tritely, so we came on different boats, but in the same boat now. No, we came on very different boats, in very different circumstances, and found a very different landing when we arrived. No one else came to the port and found an auction block when we came behind our memory zone. For 244 years, we did not have the right to marry. They would let blacks have sex with other blacks to make more little slaves. If they were sick, then let them die. There was no insurance for them. If they were strong enough to work the field, or either they were sold to another plantation. That took place for 244 years. If a slave master raped an African woman, she could not go to court. She was not a citizen, plus she was his property. And that's why you may have a family with 2 dark-skinned children, 2 light-skinned children. There's the nature of the predicament of our slaves. That's what happened. When you look around, in my family, there's 7 people, all of us different complexions. That is the nature of what happened behind our memory zone. We didn't have funeral homes, and so we were buried not in caskets. We were thrown in the ground and covered with dirt, unable to learn to read or write, or count, or think. We stole a book to learn, memorized a verse to learn. We could not own property. And when we were freed, those who had mastered us, they were bequeathing to their families land and wealth. We bequeathed poverty, intergenerational poverty, so we got free without any compensation. And finally, we got the right to vote in 1870. There was a big betrayal in 1877. This is important because if you don't have a sense of what happened in the dark, the light will not make much sense to you. And then by 1880, they began to take it all back. It took us from 1880 to Fred Gray, 85 years later, to get the right to vote tested. Fred tested the right. This is back into our lifetime. There were very few killings of our people during slavery time because they needed us to, say in slavery, most of us were not killed, beaten for intimidation. In slavery, we were beaten for intimidation. But in segregation and Jim Crow, we were lynched. We were assets in slavery, but threats under Jim Crow. We had the right to vote for the first time. 8 African-American congressmen from South Carolina alone, we had the right to vote. And between 1880 and 1940, 5,000 blacks were lynched. Dr. Stevenson up in Montgomery has the best documentation on this. From 1880 to 1940, 5,000 blacks were lynched without an indictment. This is what happened, that 5th generation where there's no memory. Voting begins to make sense because we're citizens for the first time, January 1st, 1863, and then here we come, 1940, coming out of World War II. Here come the Tuskegee Airmen, achievers because they flew when they didn't want them to fly. Here we come as achievers against the odds during that season. Here we come building some Tuskegee Institute, some Hampton Institute, building some Morehouse, building some Spelman, building some Tougaloo against odds. We learn by night without lights. And that we studied because studying was serious. To appreciate this is to raise your grade point average because you begin to make sense out of your mind. You begin to make sense with your education. It's African Americans in the lineage of slavery, Jim Crow, and lynching must study with fervor, must study with passion. We must study science, technology, engineering, philosophy, and math like we study basketball. we're the best at what's important to us. I wish I had more time to make my case tonight, except to say that by the time we get through some events, it's a long ways up the road. And the tragic fact is we got the right to vote in 1965 and lost in 2013. When we marched in with the president, Barack Obama, 2 years ago, we should have been marching from Shelby, because Selma got decapitated in 2013. They took away the right to vote, protected the right to vote again. So in the case in point, when they used gerrymandering as a weapon, and it never was, so we were never the bottom. We were always the foundation. The difference is the bottom is where you end up, the foundation is where you start from. So we are America's foundation. When the foundation moves, everything moves. So if you were in a multi-story, a condominium, you lived on the top floor, and the wind blew the roof off, those in the penthouse would be upset. Everybody else would figure out how to help you. But the fact is, if the foundation shook, everybody would be upset. So we are not the bottom, we are the foundation. So when Trump throws out his S word on Haiti, his S word on Africa, within the black community, certainly HBCUs must have a response to him. We must write about that and discuss and win those arguments. He take a shot at Haiti. There's a statue in Savannah, Georgia, where Haitians joined us in the Revolutionary War. Tell Trump that if Toussaint Louverture had not defeated Napoleon in Haiti, we'd be speaking French as opposed to English. Tell them those African Haitians built the French quarters in New Orleans. Tell them every home run baseball that Babe Ruth hit was made by Haitians. And tell them that Chicago is founded by a Haitian named DuSable. One must know, say, I must know these things. I must know these things to argue my case. If I can argue my case, have esteem, so I don't have to say it loud, because I understand it thoroughly. He took another shot at Africa. I mean, really? Every Goodyear tire, every Firestone tire that comes down the American highway comes from the fields of the forests of Liberia. The gold, the cocoa, and the coffee from Ghana. Tell him that all this intricate stuff that goes in your smart machines comes from the Congo, the uranium today. Tell him that when the Atlantic and Indian Oceans kiss the Cape of South Africa is the world's greatest trade route. So if I know these things, I can be measured by what I know, not by how I wear my pants. I just said that shout goes right there. See, if I know these things, I'm known by what I know, not by the appearance given to me by some tricky artist. Yes, I'm very concerned that this must be the place where we step back for a minute and learn some deeper, more fundamental stuff. There's a scripture that we often read, said by the rivers of Babylon, when they wept when they remembered Zion. We don't remember Zion. There's no basis for our crying because there's no cause for celebration. We've not missed 5 generations back. But I would submit to you in Montgomery, the records are there. We don't have the records, but the records are kept in Montgomery in every southern state because the slave masters had land allocated, that's documented, workers allocated, because 3/5 human, that's documented. They had taxes appropriated, that's documented. So everything and every day of our existence for 300 and 99 years is documented. Am I right? Am I making? Say every day for 399 years, our history is documented by those who owned us. And the last point, it does some terrible damage when you open up these books to the masters and the victims, because out of this thing came an awesome sense of superiority by those who conquered, and a sense of inferiority by those who had been conquered. So whites were never superior. Blacks were never inferior. We struggle today to reach common ground for all of God's children. It requires radical adjustment. Those who are down must adjust up. Those who are up must adjust down and make room for everybody on the one big tent. I've been asked 1,000 times, this is the 50th anniversary of Dr. King's assassination. And I remember the last staff meeting, the 4 dimensions of it. First, we met in his office. About 50 of us met in the basement of his church, should I say. So whites from Appalachia and from the Smoky Mountains. There's some blacks from deep South Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, and South Carolina. Some Latino Americans from Chavez's group out in the Southwest, some Native Americans from the reservations, and some Jewish allies from New York. So Dr. King believed in multiracial, multicultural, multilingual society. He didn't believe in race supremacy of any color or any description. He believed all of us are supreme, all of us are God's children, and should be measured by our work, our worth, and our contribution to someone beside ourselves. So the first issue to him was a multiracial vision, a multicultural vision. How can we be anything else? How can we get I've heard lawyers, senators, and congressmen argue English only. How can you be a world leader and you can't speak to the world? So two-thirds of our neighbors speak Spanish. English is a minority language in this hemisphere. Most people in this hemisphere speak Spanish. I did building a wall between us and Mexico. We share 2,000 miles of border with Mexico. Mexico is our eternal neighbor. They will forever be our neighbor. They are number 3 trading partner behind China and Japan. Why would you want to turn your next door neighbor against you? Suppose we were successful in turning them against us, and they began to shoot rockets across the border. It's totally irrational. So our neighbors in South, Central, and Latin America speak Spanish. We must have a good neighbor policy for our hemisphere. So most people in the world today are Asian. Half of them are Chinese. Most people, 1/8 are African, 1/4 Nigerian. 1 billion people in India, more than the US and Russia combined. Most people in the world tonight, just went to Google and Facebook, said most people in the world are yellow, brown, black, non-Christian, poor, female, young, and don't speak English. That's your world. My world is not ghetto world. My world is not race pride world. So I have the power to lead Alabama, not just vote in Alabama. I have the power to lead. I wish you believe what I'm saying. I'm not convinced you believe me, because I'm rather convinced that when we were in Alabama, I look at why are we so superior in football and basketball? makes us superior in those athletic realms? See, whenever the playing field is even and the rules are public and the goals are clear and the referee is fair and the score is transparent, we can win. But if on the football field, blacks had to run 13 yards for a first down because they lost some yards because of the home makeup, and whites had to run 7 yards because they inherited some yards. So if on the football field, blacks had to make 13 yards for a first down because they came from a broken home, and whites had to run 7 yards because they inherited some yards, so we would not do well. Talk to me, somebody. So we did not know how good football or baseball could be until everybody could play. My last point, as I look at Fred, and I cannot get him off my mind, out of my eyesight tonight, is that there is a New South. And what I read into this December 12th victory was something different than what I heard the commentators do. We won Lee County and won Tuscaloosa County, the home of Auburn University, where people are learning to live in civilized ways. In Tuscaloosa, say no one in Lee County wants an all-white football team. No one in Tuscaloosa County wants an all-white football team. Nobody in Lee County wants Nissan to leave. No one in Tuscaloosa wants Mercedes-Benz to leave. There is a New South. And one of the founding fathers of that New South is Fred Gray. It's not George Wallace. Said no Southern governor tried a lawsuit to bring down walls and build bridges. Said no Southern governor, no Southern senator made the New South new and vibrant. Or put it this way, if you put two seeds in the ground of equal strength, you put a wall between them, one will grow tall with multiples of fruit, and one will be stunted. It does not mean the small is worse and the big one is better. It meant something called photosynthesis. So say wherever there's sunlight, things grow. And whenever we pull down walls, we can share the sunlight. Or to put it another way, why is there so much hatefulness and so much fear? Can you imagine intelligent people look at a nation with 350 million guns and 8 million assault weapons, want to have more assault weapons to make us safe? It takes effort to be that. Say it takes effort to be ignorant enough to think you put out a fire with matches. Am I here by myself? Say we have 8 million assault weapons, can shoot up churches and schools, and can bring down airplanes. We must ban assault weapons now. Can you imagine people arguing? There are 535,000 people in this state who are making less than $12 an hour. See, in Alabama, in the South, Americans make 44% make less than $15 an hour, and 48% of women make less than $12 an hour. People who are working every day cannot afford education or health care or a place to live. The government is going to help them by starving them. That's why you must vote with a passion and study with a passion. Strong minds, as much as they detested President Obama, nobody ever joked about him not being intelligent. Can you imagine having an American president where people are cracking jokes about is he sane or not? Can he read or not? Am I right? But suppose Barack had had a bunch of folks from Nigeria cutting deals as opposed to Russia. Am I here by myself? I close on this note tonight, my friends. I am excited about the prospects of our fighting back, making America as it ought to be. This is the best America has ever been. As bad as things are, we're beyond slavery. We're beyond Jim Crow. We're beyond having to prove we can't say if an American can lead as president, take America from depression to prosperity. There's no institution we cannot lead. When Obama became president, we lost 800,000 jobs that month under Bush. There was a net gain of jobs every month for 8 years. When Barack became president, 25 million more Americans got health insurance for the first time. When he became president, General Motors, the American auto industry, was in collapse. He made a risky loan, and now they're number one again. He engaged in the Paris Accord that brought about an appreciation to increase climate stability. See, if there was any doubt about President Barack Obama, just contrast him with Trump. Now the whole world can see what constitutes night and what constitutes day. Let me say to you tonight, Tuskegee, I want you to have this badge of honor of being the most fully registered voting school in the country. And there was always in this school, in this place, some sense of religion as well as your engineering skills and capacities, some sense of hope. I know it's dark, but the morning cometh. And you cannot let even this season break. We've had Trumps before. We've had Nebuchadnezzars before, and Herods and Pharaohs before. Said nothing and nobody will break our spirit. It's dark, but the morning comes. And when it's real dark, a little light will do you. We can go a long ways with a little. If our minds are made up, we cry sometime. Weeping may endure for a night, we will hold on and hold out. Joy cometh in the morning. We fall down sometime. We get back up again, over and over again, because God's hand of mercy lifts us up to where we belong. And we get up again because the ground is no place for champions. And so we rise. We will make America better. We'll go forward by hope and healing, not backwards by hurt and hate. Use what you have. Don't complain about what you don't have. We must not be swimming in blessings and drowning in complaints. We must not be swimming in blessings and drowning in complaints. Deep water does not drown you. You drown when you stop kicking. So keep kicking. Keep cutting water. Keep going forward. Don't give up. Don't back up. Doctor said to me, they said, Reverend Jackson, bad news is you have Parkinson's. And say, the worst news is there's no cure for it. I said, good news, I know a doctor who knows the doctor. If I got Parkinson's, it's in trouble. So I'm not going to give up. I will fight back. I'm 76 now. I've been to jail. I've been to foreign countries. I brought Americans home from foreign jails. I've seen the Great Wall of China. I met with Mandela. I walked with Martin King. I've seen a lot. But I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor their seed beg for bread. God bless you. Keep up alive. in here just for a moment. Students, before anybody leaves, if you live in Tuskegee and you're not a registered voter in Tuskegee, I want you to stand. Now, you may be registered, hello? You may be a registered voter in Atlanta or Chicago, where you come. Say, if I live in Tuskegee, if I live in Macon County, I should vote where I live. I have the right of residency. I have the right to vote where I receive my mail. I live wherever I stayed the last 2 or 3 nights in a row. If you are not a registered voter in Tuskegee, stand. You're not a registered voter, stand. Be fair with me. You're not a registered voter you're not a registered voter in Tuskegee, stand. Just keep standing. You're 17 I'm 17 or older. If you're 17 or older, you have the right to register, stand. So, keep standing. You're 17 or older. You're 17 or older. You have the right to register. Keep standing. Say, I may be registered. Say, hello. Say, I may be registered where I come from. I'm not going back to Atlanta just to vote. I'm not going to Miami just to vote. I'm not going to Chicago to vote. So I have the right to have easy access to voting. Easy access. I have the right to vote on my campus, where 4,000 people live and work every day. I want y'all to come down front. I'm gonna register y'all right now. Come on down. We're gonna register right now. Come on down. If you are registered, raise your right hand. You are registered to vote. In Tuskegee, raise your right hand. If your hand not up, get up. And come on down. Come on down. Come right on down. I'm not going to turn you loose. Come right on down. If you are sure you're a registered voter, raise your right hand. See, if you are sure you're registered to vote in Tuskegee and you live here, raise your right hand to heaven. So I am sure I'm registered to vote in Tuskegee. I live here. Now, if you're not sure, get up right now. Just get up. So I declare under the heavens, I am a registered voter in Tuskegee. Tonight, I'm in this sacred chapel. If I am lying, with my hands pointed toward the heavens, I hope I'll forget every answer on every exam, lose my job, and never hit the lotto. Come on down. If you come around there. Now, see what's tricky about this is that it doesn't mean that you're bad people. My grandmother was not going to vote for me to run for president because she couldn't read and write. She didn't want to make no accident, gone and embarrass herself. So we had to help her. And some people, you should be registered, but you're not, so you're ashamed of it. So I should be registered in Tuskegee, but I ain't, and I'm ashamed. Get up. Look to the left and look right. So you sure you're registered? If they're lying, say, get up. Look at them right now, say, get up. If you look at them right now, say, are you sure? Think, come right on down. I declare under the heavens, I am registered. If I'm lying, I hope when I sing, I'm off key and get put out the choir. I need some, John. I need some registration forms. Registration. We're going to register you tonight. Give those who come down a big hand. Give them a big hand. John, I need some help to assist me in getting them to the back. We're going to. Tables out front? John, lead them out front, like you're leading the demonstration. Go on. Lead them to the table. Johnny, lead them to the table. And you can have here, you got like you got your father, old man right there.